We read the full text in the first session this morning. I will not reread the entire passage, but rather continue here. One of the things that happens when we are on the waters, we're on the storm, and we're getting tossed about, and we're not sure just what is getting ready to happen or not, is we exaggerate the dangers. That is what the human mind just naturally does. I don't know that you can stop yourself from doing it. I just want you to be aware that you do it. I want you to think about the disciples there. They're in the boat. They're being tossed about. They see Christ. They think it's a ghost. They cry out for fear. Were they really about to die? Were they really in any danger at that particular moment? When Peter later steps out on the water and walks to Christ, is he really in any danger? Is he really going to die? Is Christ just going to let him drown? Is Christ just going to let the 12 die in the boat also? What is the real danger they're in there? And the answer is none. Jesus sent them out to be trained. He did not send them out to kill them. He sent them out to teach them a lesson, to help them learn some things. What happens when we're in tight spots is our imagination runs wild, doesn't it? It is just the craziest thing that happens. I cannot explain it. I don't know that you're going to stop it or not. You just have to learn, look, that's what it does, and this is all that's happening. We have these monstrous demons that lurk in the unknown future. And they can be the biggest, scariest, most frightening things in our imagination. But when we finally step across that line of fear and step into that place where we thought these monsters were, in the light of reality, they weren't much more than cockroaches. Now, I didn't say they didn't exist at all. That is, they just weren't the monsters we thought they were. They were just little cockroaches that crunch pretty easy under your feet. That was a little gross, wasn't it? But I had to take care of a lot of those fears. Christianity is not about being comfortable and safe feeling. When he said, I want you to fight the good fight, or he called us to travel the straight and narrow, or as he said in Acts 14:22, we must enter the kingdom through many tribulations. We have verse after verse like this that tell us it is not about comfort and ease and being in our comfort zone. We're not called to play it safe. Now, we're not called to play it stupid. Don't misinterpret me. But we're not called to play it safe. We're not called to sit on the bench, sit on the pew, and just watch the game from afar. We're called to get into the middle of it and work and be wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove. So we don't remain the same. We keep growing. We keep pressing on the upward way. And again, as I said earlier, and let me repeat it, unless you are absolutely perfect, unless you are so completely perfect in your Christian development that not even God in heaven can look down and find a place for you to improve, in which case you don't even have to be here, right? You'd be in heaven if you were one of those. But unless you're that person, then we all have progress to make. We cannot remain the same. There is new ground to cover. There is new higher ground to press on to. Or if you'd like the analogy of the onion, there are new layers to peel back and new things to discover. So what we do is we see ourselves as succeeding or failing. That's what we're imagining, right? We're looking ahead and going, oh man, if I do that, and what are we going to imagine more often than not? Usually success, some people will imagine themselves succeeding, but more often than not, we imagine ourselves falling flat on our face and stumbling all over the place. And this fear of failing guarantees our failure. And it guarantees our failure because in so many cases, what this fear of failing does says, no, I'm just going to stay right here on the bench, coach. I don't need to get out there in the game, coach. Now, you can never be the MVP. You can never be the most improved player. You can never win any trophies or accolades sitting on the bench. As far as I know, they offer no trophies of any kind to the player that sat on the bench the most. Now, if I'm wrong, y'all correct me, but I'm just not aware of that being one of the trophies in any endeavor. This is the guy that sat on the bench and did nothing the most. The people that get the progress rewards are those that get up. And fear often just shuts us off from that. Now, a little interesting comment here. You know, fear and faith are both belief. So everybody believes something. Some people believe they're going to fail. That's just belief on the negative. And some people believe they're going to succeed. That's belief on the positive. But fear and belief are both beliefs. So whether you're fearing or you're believing you'll succeed, it's both belief. I think that's kind of interesting. So we have talk versus demonstration. Peter, did he talk about his faith or did he show his faith? Christ, if that's you, command me to come out of the boat. And then what did he do? Did he talk about his faith or did he show his faith? And every one of us knows he showed his faith by getting out of the boat. In James 2:18 through 20, this is where James says, you show me your faith by your words, and I'll show you my faith by my action. Now, that's a paraphrase, but that's basically what the text says. You talk about it all you want to talk about it. I'm going to go do it. And the difference between so many folks is there's a lot of people, I intend to, one of these days but they never get around to it. Talk versus demonstration. Now, was Peter perfect in this? Absolutely not. I think this is a wonderful part of the story, and you're going to have to bear with me just a second. What if Peter had got out of the boat, onto the water, run out to Jesus, they hugged, high-fived, whatever, and the other 11 jumped out of the boat, and everybody got on the water and danced or jumped around or woo-hooed or whatever, and they lived happily ever after? Okay, that would have still been a happy story, I get that, but it wouldn't have meant as much to you and I. But when Peter gets out of the boat and sets that example of courage and demonstration while the others are still in the boat white-knuckling it, and he gets out, and I don't know how many steps he made, but he got a little bit, and then he fell, and then Christ saved him, that tells us something very important. That tells us it's okay to stumble, it's okay to fall, it's okay to try something and not be perfect at it the first time, which is one of the big mistakes we make. We think, I got to be perfect the first time, which is a crazy expectation because you're never ever going to be perfect the first time. Probably not the 10th or the 20th or the 30th or, put a number on it. Perfection's just not something we do real well. It's not a practical goal, and you just got to get it out of your head. The goal is not to be the best ever. Incidentally, isn't that a little ego and pride talking? The goal is there is a job before me. There is a task that needs to be done. And when I am done, I will be across the finish line and the task will be done. Now, people may praise it. People may just tolerate it. People may not be impressed. They may not be impressed. That is not the point. The point is there was a job and the job got done. Now, the critics will talk about those in a moment, but perfection. When you start expecting perfection, that's going to stir up fear that just paralyzes you to death. And that's why so many people don't move. Is because they're scared to death to try because I can't do it perfect. Well, who's expecting you to do it perfect? Absolutely no one. You're a beginner. That's one of the things I like about the whole karate system. You come in and you're a white belt. Tie that white belt on. You know what that means? It means you're a newbie. That means you're a straight up beginner. You know what expectations are placed upon you compared to a black belt when you got the white belt tied around your waist? About that much. Stand up, pay attention, listen. But as you progress on, the expectations with experience and years become more. Christians need to think that way too. I'm going to do my first sermon. This is going to be a white belt sermon. This isn't going to be very pretty, but I'm going to get out on a mat and I'm going to at least stand up and do something. Now, years later, you'll progress on up the ranks and then you'll become an efficient speaker with enough practice. But if you expect perfection from the very beginning, you're dead in the water already because it doesn't work that way. So here we have Peter. He got out on the water. I don't know how many steps he took, and really it doesn't really matter, does it? Did he take 2? Did he get 3 feet from the boat? Did he get 10 feet from the boat? How far out did Peter get before he noticed, whoa, wait a minute, and then he started sinking? I have no idea. But he got out and he walked some steps. I think that is awesome. That's amazing right there. And a lot of people think this guy, who is a failure, because he didn't make it all the way to Jesus, right? So totally failure, right? He only walked on the water 3 or 4, 6, 10 steps. Well, that's nothing. Are you crazy? That's awesome. And a lot of people today think he is number 2 in the New Testament, second only to Jesus. Now, I personally prefer Paul in the number 2 spot, but that's just a matter of opinion, right? So, Peter, he didn't just think about getting out of the boat. Peter got out of the boat and experienced the miraculous for a few moments. Now, remember, we said he's getting out of the boat before the storm ceases. Look at your text if you need to look at that. The storm doesn't cease till God crashes in the boat. And so when Peter's getting out of the boat, it's rough water. And yet he's getting out of the boat. He is not talking about his faith, because anybody can talk. He's demonstrating his faith. Now let's talk about the critics a minute. What do the critics focus on? Well, I know he got out of the boat, but, right? What about those successful steps? I tell you what, we'll go out to the Arkansas River, and if you can just take 2 steps out on the water, I'd get just to take 1 step out on the water, right? We'll get it into the dock, you just hop off the dock, and you just stand there. You don't have to step anywhere. Just stand on the water. What are we going to say about you in that particular moment? I'm going to be getting in looking for the rock you're standing on. That's got to be shallow water, right? Or it's either no December, it's frozen, I don't know. But we had a guy who does the most phenomenal, amazing thing. He puts his trust in Jesus. Jesus says, come. Peter's thinking, I know I can't do this on my own, but with me and God, we can do it. And he does it. He makes however many steps he makes, and the critics go, well, you know he sank. That's the only thing they can focus on. Critics are those that are too scared to get out, and the teachers are the ones that are out of the boat helping other people. Here's your basic rule about critics. Now, this is a rule of thumb, so you get a little variation here in case-by-case basis. If the critic's not signing your paycheck, you have no obligation to listen to him or her. May I say it again? If the critic's not signing your paycheck, you have no obligation to listen to them. Now, I recommend that you listen to every critic and be polite and then say thank you. And then all the stuff they said that was garbage, toss it. But if they gave you 1 grain of truth, hang on to that one. Critics aren't 100% useless, but they're usually the ones too scared to get out of the boat, too scared to do anything. They can tell everybody else how to do everything. Oh, yeah, they know everything about everything. But to get up and do it, well, don't expect that. So, how many steps would make Peter a success? I'd say just 1. And I would say if you take 1 step out of the boat, and you just take 1 step before you stumble, I'd say that makes you a success. That gives you some experience to build on, and from that one you can build on more and more. And Peter, not a real pretty picture, but he kept trying, and he kept trying, and he kept trying, and after some years, he got it together. And Peter would be on everyone's top 3 list of New Testament characters. A lot of folks' top 2 list. So don't focus on the critics. Don't give them too much of your attention or time. Again, let me say it again. If they say something constructive, pick that grain out and hang on to that one. But the rest of the garbage, ignore them. If they're not out there doing, if they're not walking on the water teaching, you don't have a responsibility to listen to them. You focus to the people that are pressing on. Your role models are not the folks that are not doing. If you'll read Hebrews chapter 11, it's our role models of faith right there, right? The Hall of Fame of faith. Abraham wasn't sitting on the sidelines, was he? Noah wasn't sitting on the sidelines, right? Moses wasn't sitting on the sidelines. Read through those people there. They weren't the people just sitting around murmuring, complaining about how somebody else was doing a job they were too afraid to get up and join in on or be part of or to initiate. Critics are not going to be in heaven because God says, murmur not. And all the critics doing is murmuring. God don't allow murmurs into heaven. Now, if somebody has some constructive instruction to give, that's another thing. There is a thing such as constructive criticism, we call it. But murmuring, just looking for a white fight, looking for something to whine about, you don't even look at those people. You focus on the people that are pressing on the upward way, the ones that are out there trying to do it. Think about it. Which role model do you want to imitate? So I've got David. I'm thinking David and Goliath. I got David. I've got enthusiasm, got spunk. I've killed a lion and a bear. This old Goliath, this Philistine, he ain't going to be any different than them. There's your role model. And then you got the other role models, his brothers. What are you doing here, punk kid? Get back home. You're just wasting time. You know, just murmur, complain. Now, which one do you want to imitate? Do you want to be David or do you want to be David's brothers? In here, we want to be David's, don't we? In here, we imagine ourselves as David. I'm David. I can take this giant. I don't know what your giant is, but I can take this giant. But a lot of times in action, people are David's brothers, just complaining and criticizing and condemning. Let's talk about this imperfect walk a little bit more. Peter definitely had room for improvement. Amen? Who bats 1,000? Not even Peter. And Peter, as awesome as he became later on in Galatians chapter 2, I'm not turning there now, but you can write it down. Galatians chapter 2, Paul called him on the carpet, so to speak, because Peter had got caught up in playing the hypocrite. And so much so that even Barnabas was drug into this hypocrisy with him. I believe that's Galatians 2, starting at verse 11. Peter had room for improvement. We always have room for improvement. Our walk is always imperfect. Isn't that great? Doesn't that take the pressure off? May I tell you a little karate example again? I know most of you are not in karate. My grandkids get it. Miss Lori gets it, and that's probably about it. But in karate, we do what we call a kata. And a kata is just a formal exercise, which you see them done on TV and the movies now and then, and you look at them and you go, ooh, that's cool. Do you know that the mentality within the martial arts is no one ever does a perfect kata? No one ever does a perfect kata. Every kata is imperfect. You know what that does? That takes the pressure off. So here I am, I'm a lower ranking guy, and I've got to get out here and do a kata, right? And you're going to be the only guy on the mat, and everybody's watching you to see how you do it, and you're like, ah! But I'm going to be imperfect. And guess what? That's okay. Because not even the head of the school can do a perfect kata. There is no perfect. It's a neat little thing to talk about. It's a neat little goal. Peter had room for improvement, yeah. And guess what in Christianity you always have room for? Room for improvement. That's not bad until you settle into it and go, well, nobody's perfect, so why should I try? Now we got a problem. That's called lukewarm. Nobody's perfect, so why should I bust my back trying to be better? Now we got a problem. Because you're always trying to improve. You're always trying to press on the upward way, new heights I'm gaining day by day. Peter had room for improvement. We always have room for improvement. And our first attempts are never pretty. How many preacher stories have you heard where they said, man, if you heard his first sermon, you'd never thought that guy'd make a preacher? And we all know preachers who made lifetime careers, and at first people said, you need to keep your day job. I don't think this is going to work. That's the beginning of everything. Everything. Some get off to a little quicker start, others a slower start, but first attempts are always ugly, and if you can be comfortable with being ugly, then that's fine. You got it made. Better to try and fail than never try at all. What do we say? Better to love and lost than never loved at all. So you can't learn anything until you get out of the boat. That's the only way you can do it. Do your academic studies. You need a little learning and book learning. But until you get beyond the book learning, actually get out there and try, you're never going to learn anything. And if you're the person who says, well, I tried that twice, or I tried that once, or I tried that 3 times, you're never going to learn anything. How many of you play a musical instrument? Raise a hand or not. But how many of you are really great the very first time? How many of you were just absolutely awesome after the first year and people thought you were a professional already? It doesn't work that way, does it? And so when we lead prayers and we get involved in the public service and we teach classes, we get to what some people think is the big point, the sermon, never ever going to be professional looking to any degree without multiple years of experience. Yes, some people make progress faster, but everybody needs the practice. And the miraculous, brethren, it's outside the boat. Isn't that great? Somebody said, everybody wants to see a miracle, but no one wants to be in a position to receive a miracle. That's an interesting statement. Now, I understand our position on miracles. We're not going to get into all that right now. But everybody wants something great to happen in their life, right? But nobody wants to get over there in that place where something great can happen. I want to sit in my recliner, IST remote in my hand, or nowadays it's iPad, in my hand, and right there, Lord, make something great happen in my life, please, God. But don't make me get out of the recliner, please. Can't you just do it right here? Can't you get in the recliner with me? You see, it doesn't work that way. You got to get outside the boat. That's where Peter had to go. He had to go outside the boat, and when he put his feet on the water, that's where Peter found that awesome experience that we're going to ask about. James 3:2. Again, nobody's perfect. James 3:2 says, we all stumble in many things. I want you to look around the audience. You know what we are? We're a crowd of people walking on the path to heaven, and we're all just stumbling forward. I can't do it perfectly. You can't do it perfectly. We're stumbling forward. We all stumble in many things. That's what James 3:2. Incidentally, that's a direct quote. That's not a Clarence paraphrase there. We all stumble in many things. So we're stumbling forward. I like forgot my author's name, John Maxwell, who wrote the book Failing Forward. And the idea is if you're going to fall, at least fall forward. You know, if you're going to be out there on the track running and you're going to stumble and fall, at least fall across the finish line. Don't fall back away from the finish line. Fall forward. And if you fall, just keep getting back up and keep pressing on. Because if we all stumble in many things, that means we're all down, we're up, we're down, we're up, we're down, we're up, and we keep moving forward. Now, with some time, we'll get better at it, but it takes a little courage to get out there and go, okay, I'm going to fail forward. I'm going to get out of the boat. I don't know how many steps I'm going to get. I'm going to get out of the boat. It was a lot better than the 11 that stayed in the boat. And Jesus never, ever lost sight of Peter. How much danger was he really in? I'm going to tell you none. Now, let me connect the dots. Let's say we need teachers for such and such class. How much danger are you in to walk into that class? You may get frustrated. You may get worn out. You may find out you didn't know the Bible as much as you thought you did. That's all good stuff, incidentally. That's progress. But how much danger are you in? You get called on to lead a public prayer. And in Indiana, we had a preacher. His name would come to me in a minute. And he would always say it this way. I'm going to use Chris's name as an example. And he said, and in a moment, we're going to be led in prayer by Chris Bodiford. And he's going to come down to this microphone right here. Talk about make you feel like you're on the spot. How much danger would a person be in, literally? What is the chance that, the guy gets up to lead the prayer and he bumbles a few words and he forgets a sentence or two and an incomplete sentence here and he finally makes it to the amen and we're just like, no way, and we grab him. Several of us just drag him out. Back that way, I guess. We start finding rocks. There's a brick pile out there. We're going to kill you. We're going to stone you right now, Stephen, because you messed up that prayer. That's just too crazy to even think about, isn't it? That's just like, preacher, you nuts. I'm no more nuts than the person in the pew thinking, if I lead a song and I mess it up, they're going to kill me. They'll never like me again. They'll never respect me again. They'll never talk to me again. They'll never be my friend again. They'll just totally ostracize me completely. They're going to kick me off the planet. I'm going to have to start a colony on Mars. You're safe, totally safe. And one thing you need to keep your eye on is Jesus, because he never loses sight of you. And if Jesus hadn't lost sight of you, you're perfectly safe. So, what's your safe place? Of course, everybody's going to say God, right? Because we're in church. What are you supposed to answer? I was at a little youth gathering once. I was one of the youth. I used to be one. And the instructor, the teacher asked us, your house is on fire. What's the first thing you're going to take out? Well, it was a little Bible class gathering, right? We were on a sandbar having a little fun in Bible class. What do you think everybody said? My Bible? Because that's what you're supposed to say, right? So if I say, what's your safe place? Well, this is a sermon, this is church. Well, you got to say God. No. Now, God is a good answer. That's the ultimate answer. But let's be honest. For a lot of folks, the answer is my friendships. Now, this is valid. You're going, well, no. I value my friendships. They're my safe place. And I value them so much, I can't get up and lead a prayer because they might giggle at me. I can't get up and try a devotional because I might mess up and they might laugh at me. I would rather have my friendships, my relationships secure the way I want them rather than risk them ribbing me for the next 6 months because I got a sentence backwards. I said the wrong verse. I led the wrong verse in a song. I started the wrong song. I told y'all 110 and I started on 210. You know, we would rather have our relationships secure than step out of the zone of that security and take a chance where our friends might ridicule us, laugh us, or even, heaven forbid, criticize us and reject us. What's your safe place? And if you can't get out of the boat because you're worried about what people think, then your safe place is your relationships. It's not God. It could be money, land, and possessions. It could be alcohol and drugs, which are a comforting short answer that lead to all kinds of trouble and distress. It's an ugly path to go down. It could be social media. There are people now who don't know how to have relationships. There was one summer camp getting together here. I think it was this year. It may have been last year. And one of the things they were going to teach the teenagers was how to talk to other teenagers without an iDevice, an iPad, or anything. Do you know the way we did it, us old people? Remember when you went to summer camp, if you got to, or you were at school, and you sat around the same table, or you went to the same this or that, and you talked? Kids don't know how to do that. And they're going to teach them how to have communications without their devices. Is that wild or what? What's your safe place? So some people, it's their social media. That is their safe place. And so what I'm going to tell you is Jesus is not in those safe places. They may feel safe, but that's not where Jesus is. Jesus is out of the boat. He's on the stormy sea. And so you got to be Peter. You got to get out of the boat. And you got to get over there where Jesus is. Now, I realize we're into symbolism. That's going to mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. If later on you need to sit down and flesh this out to make personal application to you, I'll help you do that. But you got to get out of the boat. That's where all the fun is. That's where the adventure is. That's where the excitement is. That's where the growth and development is. Now, I'm going to tell you, you can be remarkable. You got 12 in the boat and only one gets out. Now, which one are you impressed with, right? The majority of folks aren't going to leave their comfort. Why do you think it says straight and narrow is the way and few there be who find it? But broad is the way. And that's the one most folks like. Why? Because it's comfortable, it's easy, I can do what I want, when I want, how I want. Nobody's putting me in the spotlight, nobody's making me nervous, and so we're just not going to leave that comfort zone. If Peter only had a little faith, and that is what Christ said, remember? He started singing, he said, oh, you have little faith, why'd you doubt? What about the 11 in the boat? What was their faith? I'm not sure, but I think that's something to answer and think about. So 2 Corinthians 5:7 says, we walk by faith, not by sight. Ephesians 3:20, we got to read this one. This is the one where he says, he can do things we have not imagined. I've used it several times lately. And even if I had it memorized, which I don't yet, but we should read it. Ephesians 3:20. Now to him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all we ask or think, according to the power that works in us. we can be remarkable. We can surrender to that power like Peter surrendered to that power. Or you might want to think Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Peter's the remarkable one. Why? Well, he sunk. Yeah, but he got out of the boat. He actually did it for a few steps. And I don't know about you, but my mentality is, if I can do it for a minute, I can do it for a minute and 3 seconds. Give me another try. And if I can do it for a minute and 3 seconds, I can do it for a minute and 10 seconds. Give me another try. And if I can do it that long, I can just keep tacking a little time on, a little time on. You know, my mentality, and I hope this is your mentality, is if I can do it a little bit, I can do it just a little bit more. You know, people say, well, I can't touch my toes. I can barely touch my knees. Oh, can you touch your knees? If you can touch your knees, touch your knees. But guess what? If you'll push it just a little bit, you can go just a little further down next time. If you'll keep at it, now it may take you a year, but if you have the mentality that I'm going to keep going, then one of these days you'll be touching your toes. But if you have the mentality, oh, I'm going to touch my knees, that's all I can ever do. I can never touch my toes. Guess what? You'll never touch. You'll never touch your toes. And it's that way with so many, many things. You can do so many remarkable things one tiny little bitty step at a time if you'll keep pressing on that direction. Now, physically, age will put some limits on us. I get that. But spiritually, there are no limits. Do you get that? So if you stumble while trying, who doesn't? Again, I mean to laugh because we just need to get over that one. Jesus will lift you up. And let me tell you something else. The rest of us will lift you up too. You mess up a song, we may giggle at you, but we do not want to hurt your feelings at all. We do not want you to quit. We don't want to run anybody away. We want everybody to bring out the best that's in themselves. And we are on your side. You get up to speak and you're so nervous you can't hardly talk. Guess what? Everybody in the audience is sympathizing with you because they know that they themselves would be scared to death if they were on this side of the podium too. There's so much sympathy coming out of other people, but our imagination runs wild and we imagine those monstrous demons, and it's just craziness. Christianity, it's not about comfort. Let me move on. I'm running out of time. Many get comfortable. They get comfortable in the routines. They get comfortable in their mediocrity. I'm just doing the same thing I've done for the last 15 years. This is our normalcy. This is our comfort zone. And they just like, I'm going to heaven. What do I need to get out of it? Well, let me back up. I'm not sure you're going to heaven. I'm not sure. The person that gets comfortable in mediocrity, normalcy, their comfort zone is going to heaven. I'm thinking off of Revelation 3, verse 15 and 16. If you're lukewarm, what did he say he would do? God's calling us out of our comfort zone. He's calling us out of our normalcy. It was normal to stay in the boat. He called Peter out of the boat. And growing pains, it's hurt, it's not comfortable, it's not fun. In a sense, that's just part of it. But again, this is mentality here that's all messed up. So you want to be athletic, and a kid's got a goal. I want to run in a marathon. Jacob Hudgens, that's one of his goals. He wants to run in a marathon. Or maybe he finally ran in the Boston Marathon, I'm not sure. But he wanted to do it. You know what the guy does? He trains and trains and runs and trains. And I'm like, what? That's got to hurt. He says, it does. But I want to do it. And his passion to run in a marathon is bigger than that discomfort that comes with all the training. Sure, growing pains are part of it. But if you want it bad enough, it's just part of the price you pay. So we get out of our comfort zone. We step into the adventure of the unknown, which is an exciting place to live because anybody can stay in the boat. God's looking for a special people. A peculiar people who are zealous for good works. So there's always going to be an excuse. You can find a way, you can find an excuse, and there's always going to be reasons, and you just got to move forward. Whether in season or out, you got to be excited because there are lessons in the storm. If you want to grow, that's the place to grow. And so out of depth of faith, your depth of faith is revealed. Our depth of faith as we get out there, or our lack of faith is revealed. And the storms, they show us what's possible, and there's so much possible. They're just wonderful training that levels us up. And there are things that you're only going to learn in the storm. I mean, that's the only place you get it. And you'll never learn to preach sitting in your recliner. The only place to learn to preach is right here. Now, it doesn't have to be this building, but it's got to be this position in front of an audience. Now, you can use the little podium, get down on the floor if it makes you feel safer, but the only way to learn to preach is to preach. The only way to learn to lead songs is lead songs. The only way to learn to lead prayers, you can practice at home, yes, but you got to get up here to the mic and lead prayers. The only way to learn to officiate at the Lord's table, like Brother Vic did today, is get up here and do it. The only way to make announcements, like Brother Chris made announcements today, is get up here and do it. The only place we can learn these things is in the storm of doing it. Last slide. Ooh, I'm over. Boy, I hate that. 11 men. These were godly men. They were disciples of Jesus. These are the guys hanging out in the boat, right? But they still needed to learn how to get out of the boat. They still needed to learn those lessons. So following Jesus, it's just more than, well, I was baptized and I got my Sunday attendance down. Those are good things. Baptism, obviously a good thing, right? And being here on Sunday, that's a great thing. But Christianity is way more than baptism and attendance. It goes much deeper. It's about taking all those talents that God put in us and learning to unpack them. It's learning to get out of the boat and press on to higher ground. So let me get right there. And let me just ask, have you been guilty of trying to stay in the boat?